Hey guys, how's it going? Phase 3 of Ashes of Creation's Alpha 2 has finally released, and we now have the game up 24/7. As such, I've jumped in over the last few days just to get my bearings, and I'm enjoying it so far. It's definitely an alpha, it's definitely not for everyone, and it's definitely not a game yet. So if you're watching this video wondering if you should jump in, really subjective. Really comes down to you and whether you're willing to drop $100 on getting into an alpha. But just know from the start that there is limited questing, there is limited things to do in this world. So be really mindful if you are planning to pick this up or you're thinking about it. There's not a great deal to do. You're going to be farming the same mobs, you're going to be doing the same quests, you're going to be gathering the same materials. Just to be aware of that. Now, what I want to talk about in this video is a few key things. First being combat, and then I want to talk about the construction and crafting systems. So the node construction and then the individual crafting systems as they are. So first up, combat. Combat remains really strong in my opinion. There remains that really strong class identity that obviously hasn't changed for Ashes of Creation. If you're grouping for challenging combat, you want a tank, you want a healer, which in my view is a good thing. Not everyone's going to like that. A lot of MMO players, especially modern MMO players, like to be able to solo certain parts of the game. And look, you can't really do that in Ashes of Creation. You can solo mobs here and there out in the world, but to properly run through some of the content, you need to be in a group. That's because Ashes is really focused in on the social aspects of their MMO. This is a sandbox MMO, which we'll get to with the nodes and the crafting aspects of things, but they really want players to socialize here. And I think they've done a really good job of that. Anytime I went to an area to complete a quest, and granted, it's the start of Phase 3, it's very populated right now, but walking around the world, you'd see people doing quests, you'd see them doing challenging quests, and they will actively reach out to you and say, hey, let's group up. Or you can reach out to them and say, hey, let's do it. Sometimes you don't even say anything. You just get a straight invite to a party. So there's a lot of social cohesion here, and it works really well in the combat space. Combat remains flashy. It remains animated. It looks great and it feels great in that respect. It's one of the more polished systems in Ashes of Creation and one that I really, really enjoy. But let's move on to talking about the crafting and node construction, which are a couple of the big ticket items players are really ready to see in Phase 3. Now, I've seen a lot of criticism so far on both of these systems, and some of this is really valid. But I think a lot of the criticism may also come down to a significant lack of player onboarding. I raised the same concern at the start of Phase 2. Player tutorials for systems and onboarding in Ashes of Creation is abysmal. It is absolutely awful, in fact. And I can hear you now saying, it's an alpha, and it is. This is an alpha product. But would it have been so hard to have a legitimate wall of text explaining certain aspects to you? A lot of the frustrations I've seen online on Reddit and also in the in-game chat is players not understanding how to contribute to nodes, not understanding how to craft, even where to craft, where to create the construction kits, all of that stuff. And I keep coming back to the idea of, yes, this is an alpha. We're here to test things. But if you want players to test them, maybe we need some better onboarding so players know where to go and what to do. So what to test in essence. And what we're really missing here is just some really clear direction on where to go at the start. Players shouldn't be coming out of the starting locations not understanding where to find a mount. Players shouldn't be coming out of the starting locations with a complete lack of understanding about how to contribute to a node, or a lack of understanding about how to craft. But those things are all present in Ashes of Creation today. Yes, you can find this information online. Yes, you can find this information in-game if you're lucky. But to give you an example, I really struggled to understand how to create a crate to help in the construction of a nearby node. I really struggled to do that. As someone with what I feel like is half-decent game sense and having played Phase 2, it took me ages to figure out exactly where to go to find this type of information. And I ended up using the global chat to actually find it, and shout out to all the players who are helping people and answering questions in there. But I want to raise that as one of the key points. I think the criticism is valid on these systems, but I think a lot of that criticism is rooted in the fact that players are confused and they're not sure where to find this information. So I really hope Intrepid Studios works on the onboarding. I don't want it to be full-blown onboarding. I don't think they need to really tutorialize the game as if it's about to be full release, but have an NPC standing in town that explains everything top to bottom, explains where to go, explains how to craft, explains what to do in nodes. At the moment, a lot of that information is missing in game, and that is a key issue. That is a key issue for both of these things. But look, let's talk about what those things are. So construction first. In phase 3, we've seen the introduction of construction crates. These are crates you create as a player using resources you find in the world to then contribute to a node to help that node progress, level up, build the buildings, build the various crafting stations within the node, essentially help the node grow. I love the crate system. I think it's a really good system, and I like the fact that you can contribute your work straight into the node. It feels purposeful. And while many will look at it and think it's busy work, and look, I kind of land in the same scope, there's progress to be made, and it feels like you are part of something. It's really rewarding over time to be contributing to a node and seeing the node actually build out itself. Especially for guilds, this is going to be really interesting. And I've seen a lot of guilds really getting involved, encouraging players to go and get specific crates, to specific vendors, to specific things, so they can build out the node how they want it. I think it's a really good sandbox system. It's still very early on in implementation. There's definitely some rough spots to be ironed out, but it's a good stepping stone. And it's good to see that there is progression within the alpha phases and within Ashes of Creation. It does feel like it takes quite a lot to get a node up and running. I'd maybe like to see those crate construction kits be available a lot closer to the nodes. Maybe I've missed something there. Maybe they are, but it's kind of frustrating coming out of Lion's Hold, going to create a crate, and then needing to trek it halfway across the world to contribute a single crate to a node, right? So that would be my one kind of complaint there. And then let's look at crafting. I, again, had to spend a lot of time finding certain materials, trying to understand how to get certain materials. So I went for a mage and a cleric. I've got both to around level 10 at this point in time, and I'm still continuing to progress them. On my mage, I decided to try and craft a full set of the base level kind of cloth armor. It took me quite a while to do that because I had to find certain resources. Some of the resources, like the Grem skin, I had no real clue how to gather. And again, the game does an awful job at onboarding players surrounding that. Once I got my head around it, I really like the system. I think it's a really good system in going out and gathering, processing, and then crafting. And I think that process of going through the 3 phases is really, really strong. But what I see is a lot of players pushing back on the confusion of that system, a lot of players pushing back on the cost of that system. And I do agree it's a bit on the costly side. I hope that that's been done just so they can kind of test the economy so they don't ruin the economy earlier. I'd rather have a bit of a slow, stagnated economy that they can tweak rather than one that goes rampant and goes out of control and everyone is suddenly rich beyond their means. But the crafting system, I think, is really solid. Once I learned where to find daffodils, I spent a long time hunting daffodils. Once I learned how to get Grem skin, how to, get Grem corpses and then turn it into Grem skin, it all started to click for me. So I think what we're seeing here, again, is a really strong foundation to a crafting system, a really strong foundation to the node and construction system, and again, just a consistent combat system that has remained really strong. If I had some concerns about crafting, which link back to combat, it's the fact that you basically get no gear drops from anywhere outside of crafting and very specific quests. I do think they need to look at mobs dropping items over time. I always prefer a balanced system where you can get gear from mob drops as well as gear from crafting. Whether one of those is better than the other, obviously you need to give something to the crafters there. So I think crafted gear should always have a bit of an edge. But finding no gear drops at all while leveling, while going out and grinding mobs, feels pretty rough. Often it feels like I'm grinding purely for the XP and nothing else. I guess I'm doing it for the glint too, so I'm making some money there that I can put into crafting. But it feels like those systems are really disconnected at this point. It feels like I'm going out to grind for levels, and then I'm going out to gather, process, and craft for gear. And while yes, they're combined because the gear is going to help me fight things, it feels like we need to bring those systems a bit closer together. So I do hope we see Intrepid kind of move towards that stage. And of course, look at better tutorialization. Overall, my impressions of Phase 3 are positive. They were getting a bit negative in the middle. Like I said, I started out into the world, I was feeling really good, and then I hit that wall of, how do I craft? How do I construct? Where on Verra do I find these things? Once I figured it out, it all started to click and it all started to feel really, really good. But I think a lot of members of the community, and I probably wasn't far off it, I think a lot of members failed to understand how those things work and then started to push back. Because if you can't figure out how to construct, if you can't figure out how to craft, if you can't figure out how to test things in an alpha, what the hell are you doing? Well, look, that's all from me for this video. Thank you very much for checking it out. If you've enjoyed it, throw in a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and if you want to watch even more variety gaming content, I stream every Tuesday and Thursday right here on YouTube and Twitch, 4 PM Australian Western Standard Time. Thanks again for checking out this video, and let me know in the comments below. Are you playing Phase 3 at the moment? What are your thoughts on all these systems? Or are you just watching from the sidelines, waiting to see Ashes actually release as a full game? Thanks again, guys, and I'll catch you later. Cheers.